Hi, Jim here to help you out with some property management tips and techniques to help you from getting sued. When it comes to property management, if you haven't been sued, you haven't been doing this long enough or have enough business. I've been managing properties for over 20 years, and I'm going to share with you a lot of tips and techniques that will avoid lawsuits. I won't be covering specific laws pertaining to property management. Laws change all the time, and I'm assuming since you're taking this class, you already have some of the basic background on what you can and can't do from a legal perspective. This class is more focused on helping you avoid getting hit by a bus. You already know the law. Just because the light is green won't mean you won't get hit by a bus. Real estate law will teach you how to cross the street when the light is green. But really what I'm here to teach you is how to avoid being hit by the bus. And that's for watching for them. There are certain types of buses that are going to hit you. And we're going to start off with owners and investors. You're going to want to avoid owners and investors who intend on squeezing every last penny out of their asset. And these are to be avoided at all costs. This concept is hard to grasp for a lot of new property managers who are starving to death. Clinging to every investor, a property manager can get really dragged down into the desert by the owner of the horse who demands too much time and attention. If you ever find yourself in a situation where the owner is dragging you through the desert, through the cactus, you need to cut them loose. You don't want every client. You will want to spend some time investigating each one of your clients before you bring them on board. The wrong client can drag you through the desert and beat you to death. There are 4 situations where owners may sue you. Number 1 is a vacant property gets attacked, a naughty tenant demolishes the property, your staff did something stupid, or a very bad situation is where a naughty tenant attacks your owner. You don't want to be in a situation where you get the wrong client because they could set you up to fail. A good idea is to do a little bit of research on your prospect before you actually get on the phone with them. I use a little bit of a technique of sending the prospective owner a little text about my services and asking about their property. Since I screen my calls, I always respond with, I'm with a client at the moment and I'll follow up with you shortly. In the meantime, you'll find these things helpful. My 2-minute video, frequently asked questions. I also ask them to text me the address. By getting their address, I can cross-reference their name against their phone number as well as the addresses of the properties they may own here in Las Vegas. I'm going to do a little bit of research on that particular client. I'm going to use multiple sources of websites that enable me to cross-reference a client. The 3 that I use are Clark County Tax Records, Spokeo.com, and Facebook. Sometimes Spokeo will give you the link to their Facebook page, and it also helps me to kind of put a personality with that client. I'm a little bit of a geek. I like to put the photos of that person on my phone so that when they do call again, it helps me remember who they are and what their personality is like. I should also emphasize that you want to verify that the person that you're chatting with or communicating with is the actual owner of the property. Here in Las Vegas, there are quite a few crooks running around, so I do run into a few occasions where someone is trying to manage someone else's property. Managing someone else's property is fine as long as you're able to communicate directly with the owner and verify that they have given you permission to manage their property. It doesn't have to be fancy. I usually use just an email or a AuthentiSign or DocuSign document that has some sort of actual documentation that the person I'm communicating with has the authority to make decisions in terms of leasing, selling, or making decisions on maintenance. So after I'm able to identify who I'm speaking with, and I've been able to verify that they are actually have the authority to manage my property, I'll get on the phone with them and ask them a few questions and kind of get to know why they're going to hire me, or how they found me too. You know, why are you calling me? Um, why are you firing your previous property manager? And what is important to you?
I recommend that you print this page out or have a checklist similar to this before you have a one-on-one conversation with a potential client. I have experienced many occasions where when I did not print this checklist out, I actually had a difficult owner that almost dragged me into a lawsuit. Um, so there's two different types of owners, of course. One is they've had a professional manager manage their property, or it was self-managed. So if they had a competitor managing the property, here are some key questions you should ask that client. Number one is, why are you firing them? And ask yourself, does it sound reasonable? There are a lot of companies out there that don't know what they're doing, and if they were not collecting rents on time or charging exorbitant fees for maintenance, then that's a pretty good reason to let them go. It's also a good idea to find out who is managing the property. If the company who is managing it has a great reputation, then that's a huge red flag and you should not be dealing with this new customer. Another question you want to ask is, how long have they been managing the property, or how long is the management agreement? There are a lot of owners out there who don't realize that they can be shackled to a property management agreement. And some of those agreements are pretty stiff in terms of termination clauses. If they're not sure, then you want to make certain that they send you that property management agreement so that you can help them either extricate themselves from that agreement, or in a worst case scenario, teach them how to file a complaint with the real estate division. I don't think that's necessary all the time. Usually just the threat of a complaint against the real estate division will terminate an agreement. If the property was self-managed, the next question I like to ask is, are they local or are they out of town? My experience with owners who live in town who did self-management and now want a professional manager usually become a nightmare. They'll drive by the property and then they'll start driving you to drinking. I actually had one owner that lived at a multi-family building, and what he did with the neighbors and the tenants there was completely insane. And a lot of those tenants filed a real estate division complaint, as well as put some complaints on Yelp. And as you know, getting a complaint removed from Yelp is impossible. So if the owner sounds like he's insane or is unreasonable, it's a good time to get off the phone and wish them good luck.
I'm asking these questions because I need to verify that the client I'm working with is reasonable and will be a good partner. As you know, when you bring on a client to manage a property, you're going to be married to them. And you need to really know more about them, because if you get a bad client, they're going to put you in a position where you're not going to be able to retain tenants, and you could end up court for a variety of reasons. In addition to verifying that the person you're speaking with has the ability to make decisions on the property, you also want to find out or make sure they have the ability to pay for repairs. The timing in which they purchase the property has an influence on this. For example, if they purchase the property at the peak of the market and are over leveraged, they may be in a cash flow bind. This occurs many times when people get loans up to their neck in order to purchase the property. So a delicate question you can ask is, how much is your mortgage? Or you can quiz them about what they expect on rents. If their response is they need a certain rent in order to meet cash flow, then you're going to run into problems. You want to avoid over-leveraged owners and investors, as they may not be able to pay for repairs or survive vacancies. If they need over-market rents to survive, you're going to have a lot of problems. So how is this going to cause you a lot of problems? How are you going to get into a lawsuit if your owner is over-leveraged? The number one source of the lawsuit is going to be the tenant who suffers because of neglect. I have had recent examples of where commercial property owners attempted to throw me under the bus. The first one was a leaking roof. The owner couldn't afford to replace it or fix it. And of course, he didn't tell me that until I was knee-deep into managing his property. There was a major storm one weekend, and the rain had come down on my recently placed tenant and destroyed all their computer equipment. Fortunately, I had a good relationship with the tenant, and I wasn't sued. I got out of that relationship with the owner right away. That was such a valuable learning experience. I decided to be a little more proactive the next time a commercial agent called me. So what I did was I had another commercial client call me to manage his commercial building. It had dozens of tenants in it. And I decided to get my drone out and check out the roof. And as you'll notice, the air conditioners, some of the air conditioners are completely demolished, and the roof is completely out of control. Those bare spots, those brown wooden spots, are exposed foam, and if you're familiar with a commercial building or commercial roofs, all those spots indicate water penetration. So that roof is completely shot, and most roofing companies wouldn't even bother trying to patch that. That needs a whole new roof. And he never ever told me that he had problems with the roof. So if you're ever in a situation where you have a client that you need to manage, whether it's commercial or multifamily, my recommendation is to ask the condition of the roof, and if you don't trust the owner, a good backup would be to chat with some of the tenants there.
There's glass companies that won't come out here and work for him because he owes them money. There's locksmiths that won't come out here that I personally know that say, I'm not touching that building. There's people that try to come work on it that say, pay up front. He says, no, you pay first, I'll pay you back. It weasels out of it. So it took 2 months to get windows, 2 broken windows. They'd already had my money. I gave them $3,500 up front. And then we go to the back, and then it was just dead cats, gun. We had to call the police department. The guys know me. A couple of them live in my complex at Turnberry. And so they came by, they looked at it, they go, wow, Francois, I don't know if you want to do this. I said, no, I see vision. Well, if you walk in there, it looks brand new. Problem is I can't open. I've yet to open my doors. Collective group right here, we all want to be here.
Yeah.
If this was fixed, and we would be gladly paying him and be happy. No problems.
Well, the sad
but he's been through hell. This guy here has been through hell.
These guys have been through hell.
He needs to get his glass done. I mean, there's.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I can't help you.
Yeah.
Because I know the guy's not going to pay me.
No, he ain't paying.
And I don't work for free.
Right.
So, good luck.
All right.
I knew that was coming
Thank you.
If the tenants are telling you that the place is leaking or there's major problems with inhabitability or occupancy, you don't want to take that client, because when problems occur, the tenants are going to sue you for not doing due diligence and not taking care of the property. The reason why they're going to sue you is because the owner doesn't have any money. Another situation you want to avoid is dealing with partnerships. Partnerships are a lot like crab traps. They're really easy to get into, but investors can't get out of them. And the reason why they can't get out of a crab trap or out of the partnership is because they can't decide on when to get out of the asset, or they can't decide on to make major capital improvements. So what happens is, after decades, the property will fall into disrepair. They can't decide on when to sell, and eventually the property goes to hell in a handbasket. They can't make the repairs, the tenants leave, tweakers move on, and then they burn it to the ground. So it's done. From a business perspective, partnerships are difficult to work with and should be avoided simply because it's not practical to have more than one boss.
You don't have time to get permission from 4 different people to change out a water heater. They also are not going to be able to make a decision as to fix a major item like a roof or HVAC.
I'm really kind of shocked that they're asking this much money. The roof on that is done simply because all your air conditioning units have been taken. The roof on that unit is the best feature.
Probably the biggest downside to managing a property that is full of multiple owners is you'll never be able to sell it. As you may know, most of our income comes from buying and selling real estate, not necessarily from property management. Another important item is the type of properties that you manage. Multifamily properties are probably the most difficult types of properties you can ever imagine managing. If you're watching this video and have never managed multifamily properties, I would totally advise against it, unless you have at least 3 years of property management experience in single family. Fourplexes or multifamily take a lot of skill. 90% of our lawsuits and evictions came from these types of properties. We no longer manage very many of these. We're down to just a couple now, and we used to manage about 30, which explains why I don't have any hair. So really, you should really avoid these unless you have a lot of experience. So let's go through the top 5 reasons why you should avoid managing multifamily, especially if you have no experience. So the number 1 is they are much older and require much more maintenance than a standard single-family home. Number 2, most licensed trades cannot work on them. A lot of the drywall in these multifamily buildings were installed prior to 1979, and there's a lot of asbestos in that drywall. So the problem you're going to run into is when you get a plumbing issue and you need to tear out that drywall, none of your licensed plumbers are going to get near it. Their response is going to be, go remediate that entire building and we'll come back and fix your plumbing issue. So you end up using unlicensed trades or handymen to fix the most basic repairs. Number 3 is the tenants in a lot of your multifamily buildings near the downtown Fremont area are dubious in nature. They're tenants that are desperate and or have substance abuse issues. I mean, all you have to do is go downtown on a Friday night and know exactly what I'm talking about. So you have to have a lot of courage to deal with that. Number 4, they're in dangerous neighborhoods. So they're not places that you want to go visiting at night, especially for young females. These places are sketchy at best and are just dangerous. And lastly, probably the most important reason is the margins are very thin on these. In order for the property owner to make any type of money, he's got to squeeze your fees in order to place tenants and manage it. So at the end of the day, these multifamily buildings are hardly worth the effort. Hey, buddy. Excuse me. Hey, man.
Yeah, sorry.
You got to get rid of this thing. You can't be coming here. I'm serious.
What's going on?
You got to take care. You got to get rid of this thing.
I'll be right there.
No.
Oh, the motorcycle?
You got to get rid of this thing. If you don't get rid of this thing, in 10 minutes I'm calling the police. Do you understand? You got to get out of here.
What's up with you, man? Who is you, man? Can't work with me, man. Who is you, man? Sorry.
Listen to me.
What do I do, sir? What I do though? Why are you fucking?
You can't stay here.
All right. Man, California's be watching, man.
I'll be back in 10 minutes. If you're not gone, bring the police.
You gotta call me, man.
Multifamily units are not the only things that can be found in dangerous neighborhoods. A lot of your older properties built in the 50s and 60s that are located near downtown can also be as dangerous. And my only recommendation for property managers is that unless you grew up in a rough neighborhood, you shouldn't be dealing with older, rougher neighborhood properties. Fear is your worst enemy. If you're afraid of visiting a property, you're going to have problems doing inspections, lockouts, or maintenance. And really bad things can happen to you. And, honestly, people in rough neighborhoods can pick up on that fear. So there's no truer meaning than you have nothing to fear but fear itself. So if you have issues managing a property in a rough neighborhood, before you take on a client, please be certain that it's a house or property that you're willing to go visit. If you're not willing to go visit it, then you have no business managing it. So now that you've gone through all this hard work of vetting your potential client, making sure they're not insane, making sure that they are solvent, making sure that the property's in good order, and making sure that it's a property that you're willing to manage, the next thing you want to kind of go through is some of the frequently asked questions that clients have for your business. Bringing on a client to manage is similar to getting married. You're going to have a long-term relationship, so it's a really good idea to get some frequently asked questions out of the way while you're dating and before you get married. I recommend that you put answers to your frequently asked questions on your website and or your email template responses. I have found that by making owners go through my website before we even chat about a contract avoids a lot of nasty surprises. You don't want to bury a lot of your critical elements of your contract into that ridiculously long property management agreement. You should at least cover these items that include pricing, tenant screening procedures, security deposits, maintenance procedures and pricing, termination clauses, eviction procedures and pricing, and reserves. 95% of my clients who read that will, be ready to do business. Since I have never met 90% of my owners, this is a key component of my business, is having all this information on my website. And by the way, I've found that tenant screening procedures is a deal breaker among many property owners. I insist on having complete control over tenant screening. I do not allow owners to screen prospects simply because I have found some owners are racist, and also a lot of owners don't really know what to look for and are the least qualified to screen for a tenant. So in this video, we covered the reasons why you need to be selective about your clients. Having the wrong client or having the wrong property can drag you into a lawsuit. So thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.